Session 5. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last and the final prophet, the man for the mankind, by ex-Brigadier Mustansir Billah. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with the name of Allah, who is most gracious and tremendously merciful. Nahmaduhu nusalli ala rasulihil kareem, and blessings on Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last and the final prophet. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. O my Rabb, open my heart and ease my task. Brothers and sisters, we continue with our subject in particular today, that is Muhammad and the issues of today. Now, the Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stated, there is nothing better than marriage for two loving people. Trimzi. The Prophet stated, there is nothing better than marriage for two loving people. Trimzi. Quran and Sunnah thereafter prescribe certain laws, rules, regulations in the form of various injunctions for the achievement of the objectives, that is, the objectives mentioned in the previous session, in session 4. These include: 1. Having one wife is okay in a given socio-economic environment and normal times. Quran, however, allows a man to have 2 or 3 or 4 wives at any time with certain provisions and conditions, that is, provided he can be equally just to them. 2. Probably because of the above latitude, it prohibits adultery, fornication, white slavery, prostitution, free sex, open marriages, shacking up, etc. The Quran states, Surah Al-Bani Israel, verse 32, and do not never go even close to adultery, fornication, promiscuousness, etc. Definitely, it is a shameful deed and evil path. I repeat, the verse states, and do not never go even close to adultery, fornication, promiscuousness, etc. Definitely, it is a shameful deed and evil path. Now, explanation rather, my apologies, leads to infighting, disputes, breakup of marriages, divorces, murder, and in societies where adultery, fornication are not taken as crimes, apart from revulsion, rebellion against the very institution of marriage, it has eventually led to the disintegration and atomization of the entire society, where every individual gets lonely, frustrated, and psychic. The entire society is hyper intolerant. Again, as an aid to prevent adultery, fornication, free sex, open marriages, etc., it enjoins hijab for men. The Quran enjoins hijab for women, that is, and satar for men and women. Avoiding being dishabille, that is only partly dressed in public. Avoiding being dishabille, that is only partly dressed in public. It also prohibits commercial and non-commercial exploitation of sex in literature, books, newspapers, magazines, etc., and in all types of media, that is movies, films, photographs, painting, caricatures, YouTubes, Facebooks, and mobiles, etc. The Quran also lays down elaborate instructions on marriages, divorce, the people between whom marriages can take place. Now, 24 Surah Al-Nur, verse 31, translation only. And O Prophet, having directed the men to keep their eyes off other women and refrain, control, hold themselves absolutely from extramarital relationships, likewise direct the faithful believing women not to look at other men and to refrain, save themselves implacably from extramarital relationships, and not to uncover, display arms, legs, calves, etc., except for those parts which are inevitably exposed, that is, are very cumbersome to cover, and to wield their chests, breasts, and not to expose attractive, that is, the above referred voluptuous organs suggestive of sensual pleasures, that is, VPL, visible panty lines, VPL, visible panty lines, etc. That is not to expose parts before anyone except their husbands, not to expose such parts before anyone except their husbands. At the end, Quran lays down the punishment for those disregarding all the injunctions of Allah, breaking all the limits, commit adultery, fornication, and evidence is provided against them by 4 eyewitnesses on oath, having seen them, the crime, the act themselves in flagrante delicto. The unmarried are to be flogged, the married stoned to death. The unmarried are to be flogged by the man or woman, and the married man or woman stoned to death. Now, 24 Surah Al-Nur, verse 2, translation only. As regards fornicatress and fornicator, that is unmarried female and unmarried male, guilty of sexual intercourse, flog them with 100 lashes. Flog them with 100 lashes each. And don't feel pity in enforcing the orders of Allah if you actually believe in Allah. That is, if you are not munafiqeen, hypocrites, and believe in the inevitability of accountability hereafter. And let a party of the believers witness their punishment. And let a party of the believers witness their punishment. Now, same Surah Nur, verse 4, is translation. As for evidence, those who accuse a chaste woman of fornication, adultery, and do not produce 4 witnesses to support their allegation shall be flogged with 80 lashes, and their testimony shall not be accepted ever after. And with those who accuse, and for evidence, as for evidence, I repeat, those who accuse a chaste woman of fornication, adultery, and do not produce 4 witnesses to support their allegation shall be flogged with 80 lashes, and their testimony shall not be accepted ever after. For they are the ones who are wicked transgressors. Now, Surah Al-Nur, verse 23, those who accuse chaste but careless believing women are cursed in this life, and in the hereafter they shall have a grievous punishment. 3. Nudism is prohibited. So is being dishabille, being partly dressed in public. Quranic instructions on hijab, parda, and satar, the parts to be covered by the body, by the clothes, are to be followed by all, male and female alike. 4. Segregation of males and females is to be maintained in all organizations, bodies, offices, educational institutions, hospitals, workplaces, hotels, public places, and in all types of functions at all times. However, places of worship like Mecca, churches, synagogues, mandirs are exempted from this ruling. 5. The commercial and non-commercial exploitation of sex in literature, books, newspapers, films, and movies in all types of media are punishable by law. Photographs, paintings, caricatures, etc. of human beings and animals are not to be printed, published, displayed anywhere in any manner. Photos for identification purposes, like those for identity cards, passports, etc., are, however, exempted from this order. 6. Marriages cannot be run through state laws, as experienced by the West with great misery. I repeat, marriages cannot be run through state laws, as experienced by the West with great misery. All matrimonial matters shall be handled, managed, settled strictly in accordance with Quran and Sunnah. I repeat, all matrimonial matters shall be handled, managed, settled strictly in accordance with Quran and Sunnah. In extreme cases, matrimonial disputes shall be settled through unofficial juries as stipulated in Quran, failing which cases are to be referred to muftis and courts, etc. Muhammad, peace be upon him, once sitting with his companions in his mosque in Medina, inquired, which is the best woman, that is, the one which is liked by Allah the most? I repeat, Muhammad, peace be upon him, once sitting with his companions in his mosque in Medina, inquired, which is the best woman, that is, the one which is liked by Allah the most? While some companions were giving their respective views, Ali Raziullah Ta'ala Anhu, the husband of Prophet's youngest daughter Fatima, moved out, went to her, repeated the Prophet's question, giving her the entire background. Fatima Raziullah Ta'ala Anhu replied, why didn't you say the one who doesn't look at men and takes measures that no man sees her other than her husband? Fatima Raziullah Ta'ala replied, why didn't you say the one who doesn't look at men and takes measures that no man sees her other than her husband? Ali Razulullah Ta'ala Anhu dashed to the presence of Muhammad, peace be upon him, and repeated what Fatima had said. The Prophet, peace be upon him, inquired, Ali, who has guided you? Ali Razulullah Ta'ala replied, Fatima. The Prophet, peace be upon him, smiled, felt extremely happy, and said, Oh, Fatima is a piece of my heart. The Prophet, peace be upon him, smiled, felt extremely happy, and said, Oh, Fatima is piece of my heart. Tirmidhi. That's all for today. Please pray for me, ex-Brigadier Mustansir Billah.